Emily doesn't want you at Christmas. My father said it so plainly that, for a moment, I thought I had misunderstood him. I tightened my grip on the phone. Why? There was a pause, followed by the sound of him exhaling like I was the one making the conversation uncomfortable. She's bringing Daniel to meet the family, he said. Your work would humiliate her. Across my apartment, 4 wrapped Christmas gifts sat beneath a small artificial tree. One for Mom, one for Dad, one for Emily, one for the fiancé I had never been allowed to meet. I stared at them while my father waited for me to argue. Instead, I said quietly, I understand. Then I ended the call. What my family didn't know was that excluding me would not protect Emily from embarrassment. It would place the one man she wanted to impress directly in the path of the truth. It was December 21st, 4 days before Christmas. For weeks, I had watched my mother post photographs of new decorations, planned desserts, and matching holiday place settings. Emily appeared in nearly every picture, smiling beside a tall man named Daniel Brooks. The captions mentioned cousins, aunts, neighbors, and even my parents' elderly accountant. Everyone seemed invited except me. I had spent most of my adult life convincing myself that silence kept our family peaceful. Emily had always needed more reassurance, more praise, and more space. Whenever I accomplished something, my parents lowered their voices around her as though my success were an insult. Still, I had never imagined they would erase me from Christmas. That evening, Emily texted me. Please don't make this difficult. Daniel's family is very traditional. I read the message twice. Then another arrived. It's better if he doesn't ask questions about what you do. I typed 3 different replies and deleted all of them. Finally, I set my phone down and began removing the gifts from beneath the tree. The next morning, I canceled my holiday leave and bought enough groceries for one person. I told myself I preferred the quiet. But on Christmas Eve, while I was preparing to volunteer at a community meal delivery, Emily was telling Daniel that I bounced drunk customers out of nightclubs because I had never managed to build a real career. She had no idea Daniel had seen my name before. And when he searched his company emails that night, one result appeared at the top of his screen. Nina Carter, Lead Executive Protection Director. Christmas Eve began before sunrise. By 6:30 that morning, I was standing inside the volunteer center wearing jeans, a navy jacket, and a reflective vest while dozens of insulated food containers were loaded into delivery vans. Morning, Nina, Mrs. Alvarez called with a smile. We've got 42 families on today's route. Think you're ready. I smiled back. Let's make sure everyone gets a warm meal. She handed me a clipboard. You always take the longest route. It has the most seniors. I know, she laughed. That's why I gave it to you. Within minutes, I was driving through neighborhoods dusted with fresh snow, delivering hot meals, blankets, and small Christmas gifts donated by local businesses. At one apartment, an elderly widower named Mr. Jenkins opened the door before I could knock twice. I was hoping you'd be the one delivering this year, he said warmly. Merry Christmas, Mr. Jenkins. Merry Christmas, Miss Carter. He accepted the food before lowering his voice. You work too hard. So do you. I'm retired. You spent 40 years serving everyone else, I replied. Now let someone return the favor. He chuckled. You're always looking after somebody. His words lingered in my mind as I walked back to the van. Looking after people had become second nature. It wasn't just my profession. It was simply who I was. Across town, my parents' house looked exactly like the Christmas cards my mother loved sending every December. Lights covered the roof. Music drifted through the open doorway. Relatives filled every room. Emily moved confidently between guests, introducing Daniel Brooks to uncles, cousins, and family friends. Everyone seemed eager to impress him. Daniel was polite, attentive, and noticeably more interested in listening than speaking. As introductions continued, his eyes wandered across a wall covered with framed family photographs. There were pictures from birthdays, graduations, beach vacations, Thanksgivings. One thing immediately caught his attention. Every recent photograph showed only 3 people: Harold, Diane, Emily. He frowned slightly. Didn't Emily mention she had an older sister? He quietly asked Emily's aunt. The woman hesitated. Oh, yes. Before she could continue, Emily appeared beside Daniel with 2 glasses of sparkling cider. What are you two talking about? Your aunt was just telling me about your family. Daniel glanced back toward the photographs. I was wondering where Nina is. Emily's smile stiffened for the briefest moment. Oh, my sister isn't coming. Daniel looked surprised. I thought Christmas was a family holiday. It is. So, where is she? Emily laughed softly, as though the answer were obvious. Nina works security. Daniel nodded. Security where? Emily shrugged. Mostly nightclubs. She bounces people out after they've had too much to drink. My parents thought bringing that up tonight would make things awkward. Daniel didn't react with disgust. Instead, he looked genuinely confused. Why would honest work be awkward? Emily searched for an answer. It's just, you know, it doesn't really fit. Before Daniel could ask another question, Harold stepped beside them carrying a tray of drinks. There you are, he said brightly. We're taking family pictures. Daniel looked around. Shouldn't we wait for Nina? Harold's smile barely changed. She's busy. Emily quickly linked her arm through Daniel's. Come on. They're waiting. As they walked toward the living room, Daniel glanced once more at the family portraits. Something about the explanation continued bothering him. Several hours later, I finished my final delivery. As I returned to my SUV, my phone vibrated. The sender's name immediately made me smile. Margaret Ellison, one of my longtime executive protection clients. I opened the message. Merry Christmas, Nina. Thank you again for everything you did for our family this year. My grandchildren still talk about how safe they felt because of you. We appreciate you more than words can say. A second message followed. Please enjoy the holidays. You've earned the rest. I smiled quietly. No awards. No headlines. Just genuine appreciation from people whose safety had been my responsibility. It was enough. I slipped the phone into my pocket and started the engine. Meanwhile, Christmas dinner was ending at my parents' house. Most guests drifted into smaller conversations while dessert was served. Daniel quietly stepped into the hallway. He unlocked his phone. For several minutes, he searched through old corporate emails from his family's company. He wasn't even sure why. Something simply refused to make sense. He typed 2 words. Nina Carter. Several search results immediately appeared. His eyebrows slowly rose. The first email opened automatically. At the top of the page appeared a familiar professional headshot. Below it were the words, Lead Executive Protection, Director **. Daniel stared at the screen. His expression changed completely. He slowly looked up toward the dining room, where Emily was laughing with relatives. Then he walked back inside. He stopped beside her chair. His voice remained calm. Emily. She looked up. Yes. Daniel held up his phone. Why did you tell me your sister worked at a nightclub? The laughter around the dining table faded almost instantly. Emily looked from Daniel's face to the phone in his hand, then forced a small laugh. What are you talking about? Daniel didn't smile. You told me Nina bounced people out of nightclubs. I said she worked security. No, Daniel replied evenly. You said she couldn't build a real career, so she ended up working nightclub doors. Several relatives stopped eating. Harold slowly set down his fork. Diane glanced nervously between her daughter and future son-in-law. Emily leaned closer to Daniel and lowered her voice. "You must have found the wrong person." "I didn't." Daniel unlocked his phone again and placed it on the table between them. "This is the same Nina Carter." Everyone instinctively looked down. At the top of the email was Nina's professional profile. Below it were meeting notes from a corporate security briefing held 8 months earlier. Lead Executive Protection Director *. Carter Executive Protection Group. Daniel tapped the screen. "My family's company hired her firm for our annual shareholder conference." Emily's smile disappeared. Harold cleared his throat. "Well, it's basically security work." Daniel turned toward him. "I'm aware." Harold gave an awkward shrug. "So she protects people." "It's not exactly." He searched for a less damaging description. "A prestigious profession." Daniel looked genuinely puzzled. "My father specifically requested her team after another company recommended them." No one answered. Daniel continued. "I attended 2 planning meetings. I remember her now. She coordinated security for nearly 400 executives, investors, and public officials." He looked back at Emily. "So why tell me she worked nightclub doors?" Emily shifted in her chair. "I simplified it." Daniel frowned. "Simplified?" "I just..." She hesitated. "Didn't want to explain everything." "No." Daniel shook his head. "That's not what happened. You didn't simplify it. You replaced the truth." The room had become so quiet that the grandfather clock in the hallway suddenly sounded much louder than before. An older cousin slowly lowered his coffee cup. Emily's uncle exchanged a glance with his wife. No one wanted to interrupt. Daniel remained remarkably calm. He wasn't angry. He wanted an explanation. Emily folded her arms. "You don't understand." "Then help me understand." She sighed heavily. "Every time people meet Nina, they think she's incredible. She always has some impressive career, some amazing story. I just wanted one holiday where people focused on me." Daniel stared at her. "So you lied." Emily looked toward her parents. Neither one spoke. Finally, she admitted quietly. "Oh, yes." Diane leaned forward quickly. "It wasn't meant to hurt Nina." Daniel looked at her. "Then why wasn't she invited?" Diane hesitated. "We thought it would be easier." "Easier for whom?" Harold answered this time. "For Emily." Daniel's expression hardened for the first time all evening. "So your solution was to exclude your older daughter from Christmas." Harold became defensive. "You don't understand our family." "I understand exactly what I'm hearing." Harold frowned. "Nina agreed not to come." Daniel looked directly into his eyes. "Did she agree? Or was she told she would embarrass everyone?" Neither parent answered. Several relatives quietly looked away. The silence itself became an answer. Daniel slowly stood from his chair. He looked around the beautifully decorated dining room. The expensive centerpiece. The carefully arranged gifts. The smiling family portraits lining the walls. Everything suddenly felt staged. He looked back at Emily. "You made your sister spend Christmas alone. Because you were afraid I'd admire her." Emily whispered. "I didn't think it would become this." Daniel replied quietly. Neither did she. No one spoke. Even the children in the next room had stopped playing after sensing the tension. Daniel picked up his coat from the hallway. Emily hurried after him. "Daniel, wait." He stopped near the front door. "I'm not leaving because of Nina. I'm leaving because I don't know what's true anymore." Emily grabbed his arm. "You can't leave on Christmas. I need answers." "You already have them." No. I have your version. I want hers. Emily's face drained of color. You're actually going to see Nina? Yes. Don't. Why? Emily couldn't answer. Daniel gently removed her hand from his sleeve. I'll come back after I verify everything. Without another word, he walked outside. The front door closed behind him. Through the front window, the family watched his car pull away from the driveway. Inside the house, Harold slammed his hand against the dining table. This is unbelievable. Diane turned toward him. What do we do now? Harold's jaw tightened. This never would have happened if Nina had stayed out of our lives. Emily stared silently through the window as Daniel's taillights disappeared into the snowy night. 20 minutes later, his car slowly turned onto a quiet street. It stopped in front of a modest townhouse with a single wreath hanging on the front door. Daniel looked up at the address once more. Then he switched off the engine. Snow crunched beneath Daniel's shoes as he walked toward Nina's front porch. Warm yellow light glowed through the living room window. Inside, he could see a small Christmas tree and a single place setting on the dining table. No music. No guests. Just one person spending Christmas alone. He hesitated for a second before pressing the doorbell. A few moments later, the door opened. Nina looked surprised. She recognized Daniel immediately from previous corporate meetings, though they had spoken only briefly in professional settings. Mr. Brooks. Daniel offered an awkward smile. I'm sorry for coming without calling. She stepped aside. It's cold out, you should come in. He entered, brushing snow from his coat. I'm sorry to interrupt your evening. You aren't. She closed the door. I was just making tea. The quiet simplicity of the room made Daniel feel even worse. There were wrapped presents beneath the tree. Every tag carried the name of someone from her family. None had been opened. Nina returned from the kitchen carrying 2 mugs. What brings you here? Daniel looked at the untouched gifts. I owe you an apology. She frowned slightly. For what? He took a slow breath. Emily told me you worked as a nightclub bouncer. For a moment, Nina simply looked at him. There was no visible anger. Only a faint look of disappointment, as though hearing the lie confirmed something she had expected all along. I see. I believed it. I'm sorry. She gently shook her head. You don't owe me an apology for believing someone you trusted. Daniel lowered his eyes. I do now. After a long silence, Daniel asked carefully, would you mind telling me what you actually do? Nina wrapped both hands around her mug. I own Carter Executive Protection Group. Daniel nodded. I thought so. We provide executive protection, corporate security planning, travel risk management, and protective intelligence. She smiled faintly. Most people just call it bodyguard work. Daniel laughed softly. I've seen enough of your work to know it's much more than that. Nina continued. I spent 8 years in military protective services before starting my own company. My clients include executives, judges, diplomats, and public figures. She paused. Confidentiality is part of the job, so I rarely talk about it. Daniel understood immediately. The quiet confidence with which she spoke matched exactly the professional he remembered from those planning meetings. He leaned forward. Did you know my family's company hired your firm twice? Yes. And you never mentioned it to Emily. Nina smiled sadly. It wasn't my story to tell. You could have corrected her. I didn't know she was telling people something different. Daniel stared at her. You honestly had no idea. She shook her head. My father only told me my work would embarrass her. I assumed she was uncomfortable explaining executive protection. I never imagined she'd invented another career. Daniel looked around the room again. So when they didn't invite you, I accepted it. Why? Nina was quiet for several seconds. Because arguing has never earned me a seat at the table. Daniel suddenly remembered every family photograph hanging inside Harold and Diane's house. None included Nina. Has this always happened? She hesitated. My parents have always worried that Emily compares herself to me. So, whenever something good happened in my life, they tried not to mention it. Daniel frowned. They hid your achievements. Usually. Did Emily ask them too? Nina answered honestly. Sometimes. Sometimes they did it on their own. She shrugged gently. I stopped expecting anything different. Her calm acceptance unsettled Daniel far more than anger ever could have. After another hour of conversation, Daniel stood to leave. I appreciate you trusting me. You asked respectfully. He reached the front door, then stopped. I think I know what I need to do. Nina didn't ask what he meant. Instead, she simply said, Merry Christmas, Daniel. He smiled. Merry Christmas, Nina. As he drove away, every missing piece finally fit together. The family photographs. The lies. The exclusion. The forced silence. It had never been about Nina's profession. It had been about protecting a lie. The following morning, a loud knock echoed through Nina's townhouse. She opened the door. Harold, Diane, and Emily stood on the porch. None of them looked apologetic. Harold spoke first. What did you tell Daniel? Nina blinked. Good morning to you too. Emily folded her arms. You knew exactly what would happen. I didn't contact him. He came to you. You could have sent him away. Nina looked directly at her sister. Should I have lied too? Emily's face tightened. You should have protected this family. Nina answered calmly. I spent my entire career protecting people. I won't protect lies. Harold stepped forward. Your silence ruined Christmas. Nina met his eyes without raising her voice. No. Your decision to exclude me ruined Christmas. You told your future son-in-law I would humiliate your family. I wasn't even there. For the first time, Harold had no immediate response. The truth hung heavily between them. Then, the sound of another vehicle interrupted the silence. A black luxury SUV slowly pulled into the driveway behind Harold's sedan. Daniel stepped out. The Carter family turned toward him. He closed the driver's door quietly. In one hand, he carried a small velvet engagement ring box. In the other, he held his phone. Without saying a word, he walked toward the front porch. The morning air was cold enough that each breath lingered like a cloud between them. Daniel stopped a few feet from the porch. Harold forced a smile that looked more like a grimace. Daniel, this is all just a misunderstanding. Daniel looked at him for a long moment before speaking. No. It's a deception. He turned toward Emily and held out the small velvet ring box. Her hands trembled as she accepted it. What is this? She whispered, even though she already knew. I can't ask someone to marry me, Daniel said quietly, when I don't know whether I can trust the things they tell me. Emily's eyes immediately filled with tears. So you're ending everything because of my sister. Daniel shook his head. I'm postponing our engagement because of your choices. The issue was never Nina. It was the lie. Emily looked desperately toward her parents. Dad. Harold stepped forward. Daniel, Emily was only trying to avoid an awkward situation. Daniel met his eyes. An awkward situation. You excluded your own daughter from Christmas. You told her she would humiliate the family. You allowed me to believe she had failed in life. He glanced toward Nina, who remained quietly standing near her front door. And she never defended herself. Harold opened his mouth, but no words came. Daniel continued. She didn't call me. She didn't expose anyone. She answered questions I asked. The truth came from your own decisions. Silence settled over the driveway. For the first time, no one rushed to protect Emily from the consequences of what she had done. Emily clutched the ring box against her chest. I didn't mean for this to happen. Daniel's voice remained calm. What exactly didn't you mean? She struggled to answer. I wanted one day where people weren't impressed by Nina. Daniel frowned gently. I've never compared you to your sister. Emily lowered her eyes. I compare myself to her. Those words seemed to drain the remaining strength from her voice. Years of insecurity had finally been spoken aloud. But they didn't excuse what followed. You lied to me, Daniel said. You convinced your parents to exclude your sister. You let her spend Christmas alone. And when I learned the truth, you blamed her. Emily began crying openly. I know. I'm sorry. Daniel nodded slowly. I believe you're sorry. But rebuilding trust takes honesty. And honesty starts after the lies stop. He turned and walked back toward his vehicle. I'll contact you when we're both ready to have another conversation. He closed the driver's door and drove away, leaving the engagement postponed and the future uncertain. Harold watched the SUV disappear before turning toward Nina. This is all completely out of control. Nina looked at him quietly. It was out of control the moment you decided I wasn't welcome in my own family. Diane finally spoke. We never wanted this. Nina gave her a sad smile. I know. You just wanted the consequences without the responsibility. Diane's shoulders fell. For the first time, she had no explanation left. Emily wiped tears from her face. I thought if Daniel admired you, he'd think less of me. Nina slowly walked down the porch steps until they stood face to face. You've spent your whole life believing someone else's success takes something away from yours. It doesn't. I never wanted your place. I only wanted mine. Emily broke down completely. She reached for her sister, but Nina didn't step forward. Nor did she step away. Some distances couldn't be closed with a single apology. The days after Christmas brought consequences none of them expected. Word spread naturally through the extended family. Not because Nina told anyone. Because Daniel answered honestly when relatives asked why the engagement celebration had suddenly been canceled. Within a week, cousins, aunts, and uncles began calling Nina. Many sounded embarrassed. We honestly believed you couldn't keep a steady job. Your parents always changed the subject whenever someone asked about your work. We didn't know. One by one, they apologized. Not only for believing the lies, but for never asking Nina directly. Several relatives quietly admitted they had noticed her disappearing from family photographs over the years, but had assumed there was a good reason. Now they understood. There hadn't been. Only favoritism, dressed up as family harmony. Harold and Diane faced questions they could no longer avoid. Relatives began revisiting years of similar incidents. The missed birthday celebrations. The forgotten promotions. The graduation where Nina's award had barely been mentioned. The vacation photographs where she was mysteriously absent. What had once looked like isolated misunderstandings now formed a clear pattern. Their credibility slowly collapsed. No shouting. No dramatic family meetings. Just people quietly recognizing the truth. It was far more damaging. Nina spent the remaining unopened Christmas gifts differently than she had planned. Instead of returning them to a closet, she brought them to the same community charity where she had volunteered on Christmas Eve. Mrs. Alvarez smiled as volunteers carried the presents inside. I thought these were for your family. Nina smiled back. They're still going to one. Children who otherwise would have received very little that year opened those gifts on New Year's weekend. Watching their excitement brought Nina more peace than she had expected. For the first time in years, giving felt free of obligation. The following Christmas looked completely different. Instead of waiting for an invitation that might never come, Nina accepted invitations from people who had become her chosen family. Former military colleagues, members of her executive protection team, clients who had become genuine friends over the years. Laughter filled the room. No one asked her to hide her career. No one worried she might outshine someone else. She was simply welcomed exactly as she was. Nearly 8 months later, her phone rang. The caller ID read, "Dad." She answered, "Nina." His voice sounded older than she remembered. "I've been thinking. I'd like things to go back to normal." She looked out the office window for a long moment before answering. They can become honest. They can't become what they never were. Harold was silent. "I don't know how to fix this." Nina spoke gently. "Neither do I. But pretending it never happened won't fix it." After a quiet goodbye, she ended the call. She didn't feel angry. She didn't feel victorious. She simply felt free. Being left out of Christmas had once seemed like the cruelest rejection she could imagine. Instead, it became the moment she stopped measuring her worth by people determined not to see it. Sometimes losing a place at the table is what finally leads you to a place where you're truly welcome. And that was the greatest gift Nina Carter ever received.